My name is Rags. I'm the Chief Product Officer of Fourth Office. It's a startup based in London and Ljubljana in Slovenia. So we're about 40 people and about 7 or 8 of us here in London. We have a product and design center here. We are essentially trying to reinvent email. Email has been around for 40 odd years now. Nothing fundamentally has changed about the way people use email. So today we see that almost everybody we speak to suffers in one way or the other from what you would call email overload. And it isn't just about the fact that they're getting a lot of email, but there's a lot of things to do in email that people find very difficult to stay on top of when you're getting 20 emails an hour. So what we're doing is we're fundamentally rethinking the email experience from the perspective of email isn't a list of things that you get that you need to look at in sequence, but it's a list of things that you actually need to do, and we're going to pull out the important things for you. Yeah, there are a few class of tools that as product people I think are quite indispensable to get your job done effectively. First is tools that enable us to really quickly express our ideas as prototypes, visuals, etc. So I use Sketch and Proto.io are the two tools that I almost use on a constant daily basis right now. The second set of tools are actually tools that help you express these ideas to the engineering to your engineering counterparts, right? So nowadays in the world of Agile, that is any sort of project management tool. My preferred one is Jira. There are others that people sort of use, right? So engineers and product managers can come together. The third critical set of tools are the ones that enable you to understand data about how your customers are using your products. So our preferred tool right now is Mixpanel, but in the past I've used even Google Analytics for the websites, for example, is a quite a powerful tool. And finally, I think you need to have team communication tools to make sure that the job of a product manager involves communicating and over communicating, right? So we ourselves obviously use Fourth Office internally, but other tools include HipChat, Slack, etc. It's a very unique stage of a product lifecycle where you just have sufficient amount of a product to actually start putting it in front of users, but you don't have enough users to get real usage data to be able to make decisions whether it's working or not. One thing that you can do is what's called the Starbucks test, right? So essentially, and we've done this in the past, where we would go to a Starbucks, we would set up a little station with a little camera, we just put up a GoPro to record it, just offer to buy people their coffee as people come into the shop, and while they wait and while they drink, you get about 3 to 5 minutes of their time. Just give them your product and ask them to use the product and give you instant sort of feedback, right? So that's a way to get unbiased first user impression to test, okay, if this is a simple idea that we're building, is this going to be actually useful or not when people just encounter the product in the wild, because that's how actually they're going to encounter it in real life, right? And it's very, very valuable, especially when your product is still in a bit of an idea kind of a stage, because you don't need to have a full product to do this kind of testing, right? Another example is when you're working on a more complex product such as a marketplace. So we were working on this product that was connecting publishers with advertisers. So if you imagine, you have to build a lot of infrastructure to be able to test that product, right? So what we did is we actually faked it. So we would get on the phone to both sides, right? And essentially offer to them what the product would offer, and then we would do the connections in the back end. So it was a great way both to test feasibility of idea on both sides, but also to get an insight of what they would need for this sort of stuff to work. And this is really invaluable and cheap feedback before you actually spend a lot of time building a lot of building a lot of features. Once your product gets into a stage where it is actually ready for people to use it, quite a useful technique is actually bringing a few users in to a session and basically recording their entire usage of the app. When you ask somebody how will you use this app, etc., those answers are all very targeted to what you asked them. But if you just let them be and use the product and basically capture all of their reactions, once you do anywhere between 6 to 8 of such users using it, you can actually start to get invaluable feedback in terms of patterns. Where are people getting stuck? What do they do? What do they not, etc. So those are a few ways in which I would approach very early stage product testing. I actually ask people to describe what a bad day at work looks like. And I throw it in the middle of talking about products or talking about something completely unrelated. And I love this question because it's something that I find people aren't prepared for. After they see this, maybe they'll be prepared for it. But more so, I want to get into what is it that motivates them to do good work. What are the kind of things that they would rather not see in their workplaces? And it's a two-way question, right? So for me, I want to just judge, can I offer this candidate the right environment to come work where we are? And at the same time, I'm trying to get a sense for what is the best conditions under which this person is going to work, so that I can sort of create those conditions for them. A long time ago, when I was still an engineer, I walked into a performance evaluation, and my manager at the time actually gave me a bad evaluation. And I was sat there a little surprised, and I said, hey, I listed all of the things that I had done. He said, Rags, perception is reality. And that, I think, is something that at the time I was kind of mad at him. But over, especially as I've been doing more of a product role and in the roles that I do, I realized that it was actually quite a profound bit of feedback that he had given me, right? Because if you think about it, a product manager's role as the person who's in charge of a product is about managing multiple stakeholders at once, right? You have engineers and designers who they work with on one hand, customers, sales, internal clients on one side, and their managers, in some sense, the people who report to them. It's very easy in that situation to compartmentalize information to different groups. So for instance, if you're talking with engineers and they give you an update, it's very easy to forget to give that update to the marketing team. And essentially, time and time again, what you run into is there is dissimilar information that different people know that you work with, and that basically creates a perception among different people that is very different for the same product that everybody's trying to build together. And the impact of that is essentially, it goes back to what he said, perception is reality. Everybody then thinks that the product is in a very different state, whereas everybody's working together and it's the same thing. So I mean, I think for me, it's been one of the things that it's a kind of like, top of my mind to make sure that that perception of the product or whatever we're building on is quite well managed and handled, because otherwise it can actually really hurt the products that you're building. The approach we take is that we want to have one primary KPI and focus everybody's attention onto that one, and then from there you derive a bunch of secondary KPIs. For instance, in the current life cycle of the product, we have a few hundred active users, and we are in a beta kind of a situation. So the most important thing for us is usage, right? So our primary KPI is the number of active users, and because we know that everything else we can do, it could be good, bad, whatever, but if our active user base is not growing and growing fast, we've got a problem. The way to define what is the most important KPI is to look at what the 5 to 10 things that you would want to measure and say which is the one that you absolutely need to be nailing. I would consider it to be a 3-stage process. The first stage is validating your core hypotheses. And this is something that you do, or you can do nowadays, without actually having to build the product, right? So this is usually done by building prototypes that are as close to the real thing as possible, and putting in front of what you would consider your target users, right? So what the feedback you will get will lead to what I'd call fast failure, right? So either this is not going to work, or you find the few things that I think you would think are resonating and valuable enough for you to then move on to invest a little bit more to go on to the next stage. The second stage is building a MVP, or a minimum viable product. So this is where you build a product that is featured, so it actually has features that work, but it doesn't have a lot of the bells and whistles, right? So essentially it's enabling you to test the hypothesis that you kind of came to in the first stage, but with a real product with a wider set of people, and you don't have to actually talk to them to do it, right? So you can put the product in their hands and do it, and you're talking about a few hundred people here. The goal of this is to get initial, what you would consider, product market fit, right? So you wanted to build something for a particular group of users. Is that actually resonating with your target group? Yeah. And if that phase also proves to be positive, that's when you go into a more full-on third stage, which results in a classic beta, or like closed beta sort of a thing, wherein you actually add a lot of the bells and whistles, if you will, add a lot of the hygiene features that these products need, and you really then kind of release it at scale.